Nouveau-Mexique, 1947. Des débris de soucoupes volantes gisent au milieu d'une scène chaotique. Zeta-Red fait partie des quelques rescapés, ayant survécu au crash. Maintenant livré à lui-même, au milieu d'une société hostile à son espèce, il devra compter sur sa faculté à changer d'apparence pour survivre. Bienvenue dans Passing.
Bonjour à tous et bienvenue sur un épisode spécial des Jeudis d'Outre-Manche. Loki et moi avions eu l'envie depuis un bon bout de temps d'accueillir les créateurs des jeux RPG, des jeux de rôle que nous jouons sur la chaîne. Et aujourd'hui, figurez-vous que nous avons le grand plaisir et l'honneur d'accueillir Sam Saltiel, la créatrice de Passing the Ashcan édition, qui va être là avec nous pendant la prochaine demi-heure pour parler de son jeu et puis pour partager un petit peu avec nous quelles ont été ses ambitions, ses envies et l'expérience qu'elle a décidé de nous faire partager en tant que joueur aussi. Hello, hi Sam, thank you so much for being with us today. As I was just saying, it's been Loki and I wanted to do this for a long time, and our ambition was to really create a space for the game creators and writers and game developers to join the channel and to share a little bit about their own journey, their own experience, and what they wanted to create with the games we're currently playing. And as you know, we're about to close the mini campaign of Passing, and we're really excited about the last episode. So who knows what's going to happen? And today is your interview. So in a way, we're here to connect. We're here to know you better. And I will have a few questions for you as well in the next 30 minutes. Are you ready to go?
I am ready. Yes, thank you.
Yay! Yeah, you have said no. I would be like, oh no, but yes, okay, fantastic. So welcome to Les Jeudis d'Outre-Manche, let's get started. So I mean, for people who don't know you yet, could you tell us a little bit about your background and where maybe Passing is landing on your creative journey?
Mm-hmm. So I am Sarah Sam Saltiel. I'm actually French American, though I have spent most of my life in the States, hence the need for translation. I'm from New York City, but I'm currently living in Albuquerque, working as the director of marketing for Magpie Games. I've been doing various art forms for a while now, writing actually being my primary one, not game design, but I also work with visual arts, performance arts, and game design. As far as my journey as an artist goes, early on, I developed a fascination with the body as the center of human experience, how it kind of operates as this transformative membrane for the self, taking external stimuli, processing it, and enacting it upon the self and vice versa. So exploring the body through political, physiological, sociological, and psychological lenses is the root of a lot of my work. And so that broadly encompasses all my work. So I can talk a bit more about Passing, if that would be. So I apologize.
No, that's great. That's great. And it feels like it makes total sense when you know a little bit, as we'll discuss later in the game, the kind of even the aspect of identity and transformation of the main character. And it does totally make sense from what you just shared, that even the body and the transformation as a key element into the game. Absolutely. So where can we find your work if you're interested to know you better and to have an idea about what you wrote, what you've created over the years? Do you have a website in particular you can visit, or?
Yeah, I have sarahsamsaltiel.com. You should be able to find, I have 2 poetry books that I've published for sale on there, as well as links to a variety of other pieces that were published in literary magazines. And it has a bit more about me as a writer, as a game designer. As far as other social media goes, I'm on Twitter as Saltiel Sarah. I'm on Facebook as Sarah Saltiel, and you can find me and my work on either of those places.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So everybody noted down. We will put obviously the links into the video description for those of you who want to spend a bit of time exploring what you do and where you're going with your art as well. Fantastic. So we've discovered your game a few months back, probably 4 months back. And I had a call from Loki who told me that, Matt, I've just found this game. I think it's a golden nugget. We need to do something about it. And Loki is spending hours, searching the internet for the right game, for this little game that will make you live something extraordinary. So yes, of course, we like playing D&Ds and all great big franchises, but we really are looking at games that have a form of agenda, a form of challenge, and a different way to experience, role-playing games. And it's like, you're going to love this. It's right up your street. I'm a big fan of sci-fi as well. And I really want to take you on that journey as a game master. We're like, yes, please go ahead. And you say, okay, well, you have to listen to the promise of the game. So I'm going to read, see if you just allow me, Sam, just to interpret the promise of that game for a couple of minutes. And actually, I'm going to cue a very dramatic music right now on the edit for that particular part. Okay. So the year is 1956. A decade ago, Earth received the first confirmation of extraterrestrial life when a spaceship, Ocean Seeker, crashed on the ground. Since then, 2 more ships came from the planet Sunlust, trying to rescue those who were stranded. You were on one of those ships. All rescue missions have failed. Welcome to Walnut Hills, a quiet suburb near DC where you and the other members of your alien cell live in human form, trying to avoid suspicion. You look like an upstanding member of the community. You go to work, you chat with your neighbors, maybe you go to the Sunday potluck and talk about the government's new alien eradication policies. You won't want those scary aliens to take over the planet, would you? But when no one is looking, you are sneaking through the alien testing facility to release your captured family, or maybe you are trying to infiltrate the alien eradication unit in what humans would call covert ops. Every day in the world of passing becomes more dangerous. How far would you go to stay alive? Passing is powered by the Apocalypse tabletop role-playing game where you play shape-shifting aliens in the suburbs of 1950s America. What is not to love from that promise? What is not to love about such a wonderful synopsis that will take you on a journey? And it's so unique. The retro aspect of your story, almost vintage, the science fiction elements and the promise of shape-shifting into one and be undercover is so appealing as a player and a game master. And I'm sure Loki will also agree on that. From the 4 episodes we shared together, we absolutely loved it. It's one of my favorite games so far, and we played a lot. And thanks to Loki also, we really created a kind of sandbox area around this game. So we came up with a theme and a kind of challenge for every episode, but the rest of it were completely improvised. And it's the first time that also Loki created a complete audio table for the episode. So we had an entire bank of sounds of police cars, of people running away, shotgun in the background. And he kind of composed all this kind of, world as we were going on. That was a really, really fun game to play. One of the great appeal was to come back to 1950s America when you have those gorgeous, cars and the beautiful windows and this kind of really, kind of nostalgic and really aesthetic, actually, universe, and how it's so very rare to be given the opportunity to play in this kind of universe and to kind of explore it in the way we know it through pop culture and through the movies we know ever since and so on and so forth. So that was really the opportunity to do that with that particular game. So Sam, what led you to create an RPG game? So we kind of touched about it in the first question or in your introduction, but so what led you to create that game as part of your artistic journey? And what experience do you wish the players to live with Passing?
So I do apologize because this is going to be my longest answer because I have a lot to say. So I'm always very interested in art's capacity for change through emotions, whether on a personal or more societal level. And obviously I do a lot of different art forms, but because of the interactive elements, I see games as having the ability to generate emotions in a way that is difficult for other art forms to do, because you're not just reading a character and learning about the state of their mind, you're actually making choices at them or as them. And I think that can be a very uncomfortable and vulnerable headspace to be in. But I think that discomfort and vulnerability is the space that provides the most fertile ground for reflection, for analysis, for change. So as far as passing in particular goes, I was talking a lot about the body politic earlier. A lot of philosophers and theorists have developed this idea that the body exists at a center of matrix of systems and contexts, which each system not only enacting change on the body, but also affecting the way that other systems enact change. So this is kind of what I was most interested in exploring. So I drew from my experience being a member of the queer community. While it's not always the case, a lot of the times the queer community is represented as monolithic, as this collective that all has the same wants and the same desires, when obviously that's not true. And that's not unique to the way the queer community is represented. I think that's probably true of most groups that share a label, but I wanted to kind of examine this and complicate it a bit. So Passing explores the idea of invisible marginalization. So unlike marginalization based on things like skin color, queerness has no visible markers to the outside world. It's very internal. So the main challenge set out by Passing is to walk a fine line between different types of violence and erasure. So what that means is that if in Passing, an alien reveals themselves to be an alien, then they will be subjected to violence by the world around them. That is the world that I have set up. And yet, if they suppress this part of themselves, it's this like excruciatingly painful form of like self-erasure, which is a different type of violence. And so in speaking about different types of violence, like Zizek, the philosopher, talked a lot about the difference between subjective violence and objective violence. The first being a perturbation of the norm, and the second being inherent to the norm, to like the status quo. So when subjective violence occurs, then there's a lot of questions about why would this happen? Why would riots occur? This is violence, but it's not looking at the underlying objective violence that's more systematic, that's more per the status quo, that's more invisible, and the subjective is symptomatic of the objective. So to put that more concretely in terms of this, members of marginalized communities are often questioned for disrupting the status quo. So why must you come out of the closet? Why must you hold hands or kiss in public? Why would you riot at Stonewall? And I think I want Passing to be answering those questions. I think that's the experience that I want these players to have, saying, this is why we do this. This is why we must do this, because the alternative is so unbearably painful. While at the same time, each player character exists at a different point in the matrix of systems. They're all aliens, and that brings them together in solidarity, but that's not the entirety of their identity. So their small community is engaged in like this push and pull with each individual member. The halfling, for example, is an alien, but they're also half human, and that difference in their positioning in the matrix suddenly opens up a whole new world of considerations. And then on top of that, each character has their own individual personality that comes with wants and desires completely separate from like the identity politics of it all. And suddenly there are so many different parts of them all begging to be seen and recognized, sometimes in conflict with each other. So I think that was kind of at the core of the experience that I was wanting to convey with Passing.
Yeah, and it comes across really well as being really accessible as well. It's something you can take rather literally from a sci-fi perspective and just say, well, okay, this is it. There's a lot of kind of a lore about these kind of things, but at the same time, when we put the social political lens through the writing, it becomes so insightful. And so that's something we see with Loki as well. There are more and more games at the moment that are trying to push this envelope. And this is wonderful because as a player, you'll be like, you question your own biases, you question your own limitation, you question the cultural heritage of your views on the world, and is it okay or not? And that's great when it clicks and you open possibilities and you become more inclusive altogether. It becomes quite fascinating as an experience, and you grow as a person as much as a player. So this is really fascinating, and congratulations to you for being so brave and being so talented at doing that, because it's a wonderful experience, and I think it does really help a lot of people that might not identify first as non-binary or the members of the community to really have a sense of what it means to be victim of some kind of segregation, not being able to be yourself, or to question what you transform as well. If you have the possibility to be everything you want, what are you going to be, what it means for you. So this is quite wonderful. Thank you so much for that answer. That's really great. So what was the inspiration behind the game, and what are the key themes of this IP?
So I think inspiration behind the core concept, obviously I drew a lot from personal experience, but I think in terms of pointing to media, Bell Hook's book, Ain't I a Woman, really helped articulate how exactly the aforementioned matrix works. And I think it helped guide a lot of my thinking with this. So she writes about the experience of Black women in America, and how those two identifiers, being Black and being a woman, interact with each other to formulate a different set of systematic stressors than just women or just Black people. And while obviously this is a different community that I'm dealing with in my work, I think that function was really articulated for me through that work. In terms of themes, I was drawing a lot from different moments in American history, the two biggest being McCarthyism in the 1950s and the AIDS epidemic in the 1980s. I wanted to create this paranoid atmosphere where you never know whose side anyone is on, you never know who is engaging in underground resistance and who might reveal your identity to those who would wish to harm you. In addition, the mechanic where someone's alien form could be revealed through physical touch was based a lot on historical queer experience, where intimacy was the biggest danger because it could reveal your identity at any moment. And so I was trying to think a lot about these histories, and even on smaller mechanical levels. Like, I think there's a mechanic in there where aliens take harm if they bear witness to or hear about the death of other aliens. And that was inspired by the Pulse shooting, which I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yes, yeah. Ruben, yeah.
Yeah, so that was obviously a few years ago, but I remember that experience and the experience about hearing it and how that like swept through the queer community. And so I wanted to take this idea of like community trauma, collective trauma, and I drew from that. And then obviously, you were talking about the 1950s, which it's not just because McCarthyism, but I do think that there is a lot being done there with the 1950s are always presented as this very nostalgic, but also cookie cutter retro. And I think there is increasingly a lot more media flipping that on its head in a really interesting way. Particularly Lovecraft Country has been doing a lot.
Absolutely.
Which did come out after Passing was published, but I think it was sort of trying to draw from the signifiers that we associate with the 1950s, which are in one angle is seen as so idyllic, and in the other angle seen as like so oppressive, so stifling. So I think those were the different ideas that I was trying to play with in creation.
Yeah, it's a wonderful texture of social political inspiration, and it does create this sense of paranoia, as you said, in the game, and this feeling of being constantly watched, or can you not? Something that is quite funny for us in a way, from also our appreciation of the American from afar from Europe and from what we know. In some way, the way we play the game is we created a very close proximity. So my character is called Zeta Red, my alien name, and we created this kind of proximity a little bit, as you can see in Breaking Bad. Well, actually, my brother-in-law was part of the organization monitoring aliens. So we created this really close proximity, ambiguous, uncomfortable, kind of dinner parties. When we try to bring the drama as close to the intimacy of this character, and to have this kind of almost institutionalized society that are, hostile to a foreign life or different lives, or difference, that's it, all things together, was really well underlined by your mechanics and I would say the editorial line of the game, and this sense of paranoia in society. Everything can be hostile. Are you going to dare being yourself, to reveal yourself, and are you going to be appreciated or welcome for what you are? So yeah, excellent stuff. So tell us a little bit about the development process. When did you start? Did the concept change over time? And yes, how? And how did you feel the first time it was released?
So the initial start behind it was that I convinced Magpie to have me as an intern, and they had never had an intern before, so they weren't really sure what to do with me. And they're like, "Great, you're going to write a game. Pitch us 10 ideas."
Great job.
And I think this was the one that came out the most poignant, the most powerful. And when it was first conceived of, I think the core tenets were there. So shape-shifting aliens in the 1950s in American suburbs operating as a metaphor for queerness. I think that was like, this is my pitch. But that was pretty much all I had at that point. I had to really, in the process of game design, excavate what that metaphor was going to mean, how that was going to operate. So I think part of what helped that along was trying to brainstorm different playbooks. I think the poster child and the intermingler were the first ones that came out, one being an alien that's fitting in with human society and thriving in it, the other being an alien that's in love with a human. So I think those came to me as interesting and compelling story arcs for characters. And once I started thinking about the experiences of those playbooks would offer and how those interacted and mapped onto the metaphor that I set out, that helped crystallize exactly what I wanted to focus on for the game, how erasure operates, how intersection operates. Mm-hmm. As far as big changes that have been made, so I think the human and alien track technology was implemented pretty early on. It's an idea that was inspired by Bluebeard's Bride. If I interview, yeah. So
like Bride as well, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was the game that got me into game design.
Hey, here we go.
I played it. And I was like, this is wild. I've never played a game like this. I want to do something like this. So in Bluebeard's Bride, you're obviously playing the bride going from room to room until you encounter Bluebeard's locked room. And then you can choose to look in, you can choose to enter the room, or you can choose to escape. And there's the game mechanizes those outcomes. And ultimately they all suck. They don't end well for you, but that's saying something about what's the game is trying to say about the experience that is presented to you. And I thought that was really interesting. And so that was kind of what I was pulling from with these tracks. Like here, the tracks also don't end particularly well for you. But it's about trying to maintain that balance, going back and forth between human and alien, trying to walk that line, and eventually it builds and spirals out of control, and you aren't able to maintain that balance anymore. And that was kind of at the core of what I was trying to say. But it ran into a few issues because initially I had 6 stats. Human and alien were 2 of them, and then I don't even remember what the other 4 were, but there were other 4, and I kept running into this lack of balance, because it's, why would these 2 stats be so much more important than the others? This doesn't work for game mechanics. It keeps throwing it off. So it was the questions mechanic that really helped resolve that for me, which was originally invented by Brandon Leon Gambetta for Pasión de las Pasiones, a telenovela tabletop role-playing game. And I really liked it because it helps it helps return back to the fiction. It helps it be more contextual, saying, well, okay, if you're in this context, then these are the modifiers that you get for this. And I, as a writer, really like anything in game design that really points back into the fiction. As for the whole process, it took about a year. I was assigned a mentor from Magpie Games, Brendan Conway, who's the designer of Mass: A New Generation, which is the teenage superhero game. I met with him over FaceTime every single week to go over edits and mechanics, and then I would take it to my playtest group and then gather feedback and then go back. And I think there's actually a photo of me at my college graduation editing the last draft of Passing on my phone.
That's amazing. Oh, wow. You have to send it to us. We would love that picture.
I'll have to track it down. My mom was like, don't you want like sit next to me for the graduation? Don't you want to pay attention? I'm like, they're giving a boring speech. I just need to finish this.
I cracked that mechanic, Mom. It's more important.
Exactly. It
really show how passionate you are about the game, and it's so felt through. You feel that, and it's really great to see. You can love a game for its story, for its character, or its mechanic. Okay, and this is kind of one of the two you kind of lean towards too. but the mechanic really helped the story here. It's really well adjusted and it's really specific to that. And it kind of, just give me a bit of insight about the way you felt when it was first launched. What was what day was it? How did you feel about sharing that story to the world?
It was really overwhelming.
Yeah.
We released it at Gen Con, which was, I believe, the first convention that I ran for Magpie as their director of marketing. So I was running around trying to run the convention and organize everything while we were releasing this book. And I was so excited I could barely speak. I think I ended up, I had some people ask me to sign the book, and I just kept drawing aliens, spaceships all over the book as my signature. So it was really exciting. It was the first full-length game that I've ever published, and still to this day, like the only game that like full game. I've done more like adventures and freelance work and things like that. I think what was interesting about the process of from that moment onwards is the realization that it's a very niche game, but that's okay, right? Like it's not going to be it's not going to be Avatar Legends, the RPG. Like it doesn't have the same mainstream appeal, but I think that's okay. And that was I think a hard thing to realize as a new game designer, but I think kind of tempering like, okay, I want to be able to do these like weird artsy projects, and there are people who are going to really, really like it, and that's not going to be for everyone. And as much as a creative, you want it to be for everyone, you want everyone to love it right away, that's not really feasible.
And that's okay. And that's okay to be specific. If anything, we look as players as well, or game master, we look for very unique stories. Something that comes to mind, I actually found a few weeks back, and really with a kind of social political agenda as well. It's a game called Blood Feud.
Okay.
And that's a game that explored the impact of toxic masculinity in the Viking era. And you play that and you realize what is the cultural incident from that and where are you standing, and you play both gender all the time. And yes, it's not going to be for everyone. It might not be the ND, but you know what? It's relevant. It's interesting. It pushes an envelope. It's different. And when we look for games, Loki and I, we're just like really looking for those little nuggets and just like, that is a great experience to try. This is something that will push our boundaries. And if we feel comfortable or not with it, what does it mean about us as people? And this is why I'm really confident that, your game had a very good reception, first of all, and it will in time even grow in popularity and visibility. And I really hope what we do today will help in that direction, because it's a fantastic game and we can't be recommending enough around us. So, how to push that envelope with you and to share our love of passing with the world.
Thank you. That is so nice. You've also sold me on Blood Feud. That sounds great.
Oh yeah, have a look. It's amazing. It's quite there again. It's really niche, but that is important right now. This is relevant to the society we live in. So I guess my next question would be like, so for somebody who doesn't know RPG, all right, just like want to try something and ask passing into the hands. Is it easy to play with somebody with no experience? And what are the specific mechanics of the game? Something we create that is really true to form to passing.
I think, at least for me, and I'm sure that this is a very contentious subject, as most subjects are in the tabletop role-playing game industry, I think Powered by the Apocalypse is the system that I would use to teach someone to play. I think games with a lot of stats and a lot of dice can be very daunting to someone who has never experienced that before, whereas Powered by the Apocalypse kind of streamlines mechanics. So I think, at their heart, tabletop role-playing games are collaborative storytelling. Like that is the core of them. And I think framing it like that is what makes tabletop role-playing games a lot more accessible to newcomers. None of my family understands what I do for a living. They're very confused by it, and I've gotten questions about like the board game industry or video games. And I'm like, I don't know anything about that.
Tabletop RPG. What is this?
But explaining it as collaborative storytelling, I think that's the thing that they can latch onto. Be like, okay, I can kind of conceive how this would work. And I think that Powered by the Apocalypse sticks pretty close to that core concept. And I really, at least I hope, the Passing is equally accessible, because as much as I have like these big ideas, like it is really important for me for art to be accessible to people. So yes, I hope it is. In terms of specifics to the game, in terms of mechanics, I think the mechanics did draw a lot of inspiration from other places, which I think, there's a saying like, is there anything truly new in art? And I do think in some ways that is true. So like the question system from Passion, the human and alien tracks from Bluebeard's Bride, and the cell sheet from Velvet Glove. That being said, I do think, especially the tracks in the cell sheet are still some of the more unique portions of the game, because while they drew inspiration from these places, I think they evolved to a point where they took on form and meaning of their own. Like, I think without my pointing it out, I don't know if someone would look at the tracks and be like, yes, this is inspired by Bluebeard's Bride, or look at the cell sheet and be like, oh, okay, I can see how this is similar to like the girl gang in Velvet Glove. And so I think those would be some of the more mechanics unique to Passing, particularly the cell sheet, which I think is supposed to kind of mimic being a community that is acting in resistance. And what does that mean? How does like community organizing function? Like, what does it mean to have a goal and have like this collective trauma and history behind that goal? So yeah, probably the cell sheet.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. This is something that we found being so very interesting, is through the actions and the decision you make, you're going to start to be more leaning towards alien identity or human identity. And as a player, I found myself resisting the human side a lot. I really wanted to stay with my super alien abilities, and sometimes you can't, you're just, damn that. And not saying humans are boring, but, as an alien, I'm having fun. So, and I really enjoyed that ability to do that a lot. And unfortunately for my character, I had a lot of failing rolls. I failed so gloriously in this game so far. I had like 5 critical failures the last episode, but in a way it pushes you out of your boundaries. Sometimes behaving like an alien doesn't work, and you need to adjust, and you need to take your shots. And this is what Loki led me to experience as well. So thank you again, Loki, for all of that and all you work as a DM beyond this mini campaign experience. That was really great. I found those little triangles and those little abilities and that shape your identity ultimately are very unique to what you've created. It makes it a very interesting setting point from a player perspective. Fantastic. We're loving it. You can tell, can't you? You're really passionate about your game. So in your opinion, this is more of an opinion question type of thing. Do you think that games can be used as a tool to explore themes of identity, intersectionality, and mental health? And if yes, how important it is today?
So, I mean, yes, is the very short answer based on all of the ideas behind my game. But I do think it is more complicated. When I was still in university, I worked on what was called an alternate reality game, which was kind of a game that embeds itself in real life, and you're supposed to just stumble across it, and it never acknowledges that it's a game. And I worked as a designer on that with one of my professors. And so we did a lot of readings about like theories behind games. And I think there were 2 different ideas that really stuck with me from that time. The first being the idea of embedded game design, which is that if people feel like the agenda is too obvious, they will resent it and they won't learn from it. They don't like being preached to, which is fair. And so it's important to, if you're trying to like communicate something, if you're trying to make a learning experience, it's important to embed it so that it's not like on the surface, but it's a couple layers down. So, instead of making an RPG that's just about being in the queer community, which I don't there could be a lot of pitfalls there. Working with metaphors is I think in some ways more helpful for teaching the things that I was trying to teach. And I think for what it's worth, I ran it. I got coerced into running it for my family at Thanksgiving, since they didn't know what RPGs were, with the exception of my brother, who was very conservative and very Christian, who did know what RPGs were, but he ended up playing it, and to this day claims that it's one of his favorite games, which was wild to me. I think I hope that that's an example of embedded game design working, and that it caused him to feel something. Maybe if I just told him this is what I want you to learn, I don't think it would have quite clicked as much. I think the other thing is that I do think games are really important for exploring and learning, but I do think that there's a caveat there, which is that I don't think people can play a game about something and say, yes, I understand everything about this. I truly understand this lived experience. Because, you can learn from it, but a game can never truly simulate this is what it is like to be like this.
Sure.
So I think that is the danger that we encounter. I know that there are some, I think, video game or virtual reality simulators that simulate the experience of being disabled. And I think there was a big uproar about it, because it's like, this doesn't, okay, you can step in and play this for a little bit, but that doesn't actually communicate to you, like, what is this like to live in a disabled body every single day? And so I think that's the pitfall. As for how is it important in 2022, always important. But I think, the pandemic and a lot of the political things going on in the States right now have put a lot more stressors on people. Like there are already all these stressors on marginalized communities, but I think it has become even more pointed, even more painful. And I think there is now a sense of urgency to it. And I think there's always been a sense of urgency, but this sort of mass death that we're seeing that is disproportionately affecting marginalized communities, I think it's really important that people start to educate themselves on what that looks like.
Exactly. No, it's absolutely, and more than ever, in a way, shared experience and giving somebody from a totally different culture, background, gender, the opportunity to feel differently and to understand, or not deep, because obviously lived experience, trauma are deeply rooted into individuals, but just to have a sense of appreciation, a new angle, just shifting slightly goes a long way. And RPG may be, for those who are interested in playing anyway, a way to do this. And I think I saw a few. I think that was Evil Hat, which recently published a book about the toolkit for inclusivity in role-playing games, and that's the first time they kind of looked at psychological profiles about protagonist and nemesis, trying to break down to avoid the stereotypization of characters, but also putting disability and physical disability are actually positive modifiers into a game. So it tried to reverse this theme about prejudice that, unfortunately, RPG games, culturally speaking, are also very victim of. When you look at the classic RPG games over time, it's okay to kill an orc because it's different. And it's not okay, is it? So, so we try to do that as well into what we do. We try to create, violence is not the way out to every problems. Those characters have stories, their families. They're here maybe to protect the territory. They're probably here to, they have their own things to do. They are legitimate into the world you live in and you explore as a gamer. But when it comes to, I would say globally, diversity and inclusion, from where I'm standing as well as a white guy in Europe, I'm well aware of my privileges. It's also really important to promote games that will shift perception and will make maybe people question their beliefs, question their boundaries, question their biases. So there's a bit of an open door. There's a possibility to include other people and to expand our awareness and understand that we are not that different, and we are, experiencing the same things on different levels, maybe sometimes. And games is a wonderful way to do that in a safe environment as well. So this is, something that is also very important. Fantastic. So now, really, really super important question for you, and I want you to be really straightforward with us. Is passing a way to tell us that aliens are already among us? And not to burn your bridges, just blink twice if it's a yes. Okay? I'm very serious about it.
I mean, in a metaphorical sense, yes.
It's a yes, people. We have the scoop. We have the discovery of the century. It's yes, and welcome them, because they also have their own thing to do here, and they also have families and they struggle as well. So here we go. So yes. So what's next? What's next for passing now? Is there a development to the game to come up? If there maybe even like a cultural, maybe you had a translation of the game in other languages, and what is next for you as well?
So I am hoping to do a more full edition of Passing at some point. I was given the option to do it by Magpie last year. But as important as I do think these sorts of games can be, 2020, 2021, very difficult years. And Passing is a very dark game. The thing that it says with the tracks is very dark. And I stand by what I was trying to say with it. I think that is true. I understand why I was trying to do it, but I think I couldn't bring myself to work during the pandemic, during everything that was going on a game that was so incredibly dark and hopeless in some sense. And I am hoping that in a more full edition, I do think bringing in a bit more hope to the game would probably be a good idea. I think that if people are going to commit to a campaign and then saying like, okay, you've now played multiple sessions, but sorry, like you are doomed inevitably. I think as a gameplay experience, that can be a little bit difficult to digest. Right. So I would, in like a more full edition, I think I would still like to keep the core of what I'm trying to say, but put more hope into it. I think it's just a matter of figuring out how I would like to do that. As far as beyond Passing, I took a bit of a break from creative things this year because I'm in the middle of applying to, or I just finished applying to graduate school for MFAs in creative writing. So I'm hoping to go into academia, which would allow me to pursue artistic endeavors a bit more fully. And the thing that's kind of been, I haven't been working on actively, but has been a bit on the back burner. I have probably 100 pages worth of notes, is a book exploring the sociological, political, personal, and philosophical ramifications of the pandemic, written in collaboration with my partner as a conversation, like in conversation form, to mimic like the intimacy and importance of the ritual of conversation with those in our quarantine bubble at this time. So that's a project that I would like to work on next, and that's what I have a bunch of notes for. So that's hopefully what's going to be coming up.
Sounds very, very, very exciting. We are first on the playtest, okay? What a name on the playtest will be there for you. Absolutely. Yeah, it's something we might see more and more. And I know there's a form of catharsis about, coming back once we'll be out of this situation, to look back and to share a common grief and experience and the suffering that this time has been, what we let go of, our personal liberty being restricted, the difficult dialogue between people we agreed to go a certain way and those who didn't, and what it means for us, and how fear is instrumentalized in the way to also, somewhat control masses and opinions and differences, or how they fear antagonize that or stimulate that. That'd be really great to come back to it and from the other side of that story and revisit it and to re-explore it in a different way because we all have our own stories. During the pandemic, we all been through different experiences, but there is a sense of isolation even within our social context, and sharing our common grief or our common struggles, maybe throughout the game would be fantastic. Fantastic.
I'm very interested in the idea of collective trauma. I think I was first introduced to it in terms of like Jewish identity and the collective trauma as the Holocaust. And
of course,
it's always been a topic that's interested me, but now we're living through it.
It's a contemporary issue to address, and that we all obviously, live on our personal and in all of our journey. You know, we're all affected, and we are the lucky ones because we can talk about it today. That's something to be grateful for. Wow, thank you so much, Sam. I loved our conversation, and you know, I look forward to stay connected with you and to see what will be next for you, as we just discussed, and also to bring Passing into the life of our viewers and the audience. So if you are interested into the game, so you can get Passing directly on the website of Magpie Games. That's magpiegames.com, and all the links will be obviously available into the description below. For those of you who want to learn more about Sam, so what is your website, if you don't mind me asking again?
It's sarahsamsaltiel.com.
And we can find you on Facebook at
Sarah Saltiel, and it's just a professional Facebook page.
And on Twitter?
Saltiel Sarah, I believe.
Yeah.
Not a lot of variation there.
Well, that's great. So they can find you online, on social, and on your website as well. And have a look at Magpie's game. You have wonderful games, really clever writing, and a wonderful experience to share with your tables, your friends, your family members. You even can convert, like Sam, your brother, to come and join you and explore your own universe. So here we go. Thank you so much for all of you who joined us today and who watched this video today. We will try to do more of this with the creators of the games we love, to promote their profile, but also to share our love of the games. Merci à tous pour ceux qui nous ont suivis aujourd'hui sur les Jeudis d'Outre-Manche. Pour ceux qui, d'entre vous, sont intéressés pour voir notre partie de Passing et notre petite campagne, tout est disponible sur la chaîne YouTube des Jeudis d'Outre-Manche. Vous pouvez nous connecter avec nous sur Twitter à JDmanche et sur notre chaîne Twitch tous les jeudis, vendredis, samedi, ça dépend, sur twitch.tv/jeudi d'Outre-Manche. Loki, dis-moi, est-ce que tu aurais une petite conclusion ou peut-être un petit mot final à nous partager avant qu'on rende l'antenne?
Non, pas du tout. Enfin, tout a été dit.
Tout a été dit.
Je partage tout ce que tu as dit.
Explorer. Ok, bah super. Merci à vous deux. Merci Sam. Merci Loki pour cette petite session. Et nous, on se retrouve certainement la semaine prochaine sur Twitch pour un nouvel épisode des Jeudis d'Outre-Manche. Portez-vous bien et à très très vite. Bye bye. Ciao.
Merci.